For thousands of years, Westeros saw the rise of villages and towns built by the First Men, followed by the Andals, Rhoynar, and others, as they migrated into the continent, eventually forming the Seven Kingdoms. Yet through trade and commerce, 5 of these settlements grew into prosperous cities, ruled by powerful noble families. Founded along the eastern shore of the continent, at the mouth of the Blackwater Rush, along the northern bank, King's Landing became the most populous city in all of Westeros. The capital of the Seven Kingdoms, it was home to House Targaryen for nearly 300 years, built around 3 hills named for Aegon the Conqueror and his sister wives, Rhaenys and Visenya. Realizing the importance of the faith of the Seven to the people they wished to rule, 7 gates were constructed around King's Landing, as were a number of other structures which over time became associated with the capital. Streets were given names often deriving from those who live and work in that area, with the general population kept divided by wealth and class, as the rich lived near the Old Gate, while the poorest are found in Flea Bottom by Rhaenys Hill. The small folk of Flea Bottom consume bowls of brown to survive, a common stew made with bits of vegetables, and chunks of meat often acquired from pigeons, rats, cats, and some even suggest dead bodies. King's Landing is protected by a city watch known as the Gold Cloaks, and holds the royal fleet of the Seven Kingdoms, considered the most powerful navy in the continent, comparable only in power to the Arbor and Iron fleets. Before the unification of the Seven Kingdoms under House Targaryen, Aegon the Conqueror originally constructed the Aegon Fort atop the highest of the 3 hills. After his coronation, he chose to make this area the capital of his new kingdom, building King's Landing around the fortress. A few years later, in 10 AC, Aegon was convinced by Visenya to allow the formation of the King's Guard to protect the royal family after they were attacked in the streets of the city. King's Landing was then built up further under the reign of King Maegor the Cruel, who oversaw the completion of Maegor's Holdfast and the Red Keep. Maegor was also responsible for burning the Sept of Remembrance during the Faith Militant Uprising, building the Dragon Pit in its place. Under King Jaehaerys I, drains, sewers, and wells were constructed. However, the city soon faced more hardship during the Dance of the Dragon civil war, when the population revolted against Rhaenyra Targaryen, storming the Dragon Pit in a chaotic riot that saw thousands of smallfolk killed, while 5 Targaryen dragons also lost their lives, leaving the Dragon Pit a ruin. With the city all but lost, Rhaenyra fled back to Dragonstone, leaving King's Landing under mob rule for a period known as the Moon of the 3 Kings. Without a Targaryen ruler in the city, several claimants to the throne arose from among the common people. First, there was the Shepherd, a religious fanatic who organized the storming of the Dragon Pit, and then came to control large sections of the city with his faithful followers. However, there was also the Squire Trystane Truefire, supported by the Hedge Knight Sir Perkin the Flea, who took control of the Red Keep, claiming the boy was the bastard son of King Viserys I. Then there was Gaiman Palehair, the 4-year-old son of a prostitute, who claimed he was the bastard child of King Aegon II. He ruled from the House of Kisses atop Visenya's hill, gathering thousands of supporters to his cause. However, when the forces loyal to King Aegon II returned to the city, they quickly took back power, executing both Sir Perkin and Trystane Truefire. The prostitute of the House of Kisses was also apprehended, confessing she lied about her son being the child of a Targaryen. And while the woman was hanged, young Gaemon was spared and later taken into King Aegon's household. During the reign of Baelor the Blessed, the Great Sept of Baelor began construction and was completed after his death, becoming the center of the Faith of the Seven. In 209 AC, the Great Spring Sickness spread throughout Westeros, and while it ravaged a number of cities and areas in the continent, King's Landing suffered the worst of it, losing 4 out of every 10. In order to deal with all the diseased corpses, they burned the bodies with wildfire in the Dragon Pit. Over the years, as the population of the city grew, King's Landing earned a reputation not only as the center of the Targaryen court, but also as a dark and dirty place, with streets reeking of waste, and a population of scheming nobles, greedy merchants, and cutthroat beggars. And so in 265 AC, the Mad King Aerys II decided he'd had enough, and declared he would build a new city of marble south of Blackwater Rush. Yet like most of his plans, nothing came of the idea. At the end of his reign, when the people of the continent rose up against his madness in Robert's Rebellion, Aerys allowed his old friend Tywin Lannister to bring 12,000 soldiers into the city, believing he came to join the royalist forces. However, Tywin turned against him, sacking the city in the name of the rebellion. The Mad King then decided to burn the capital with jars of wildfire placed underground. However, he was stopped by the Kingsguard Jaime Lannister, son of Tywin, who killed the king he was sworn to protect. Years later, after the death of King Robert Baratheon, the city again fell under attack in the Battle of the Blackwater, when King Stannis attempted to take the Iron Throne from Joffrey Baratheon. However, the city was able to hold them off long enough for Tywin and his allies in House Tyrell to arrive, forcing Stannis into retreat. Yet this war soon saw the death of both King Joffrey and the Hand of the King, Tywin Lannister, leaving the Iron Throne to young Tommen Baratheon and his mother, Queen Regent Cersei Lannister, who proved a poor administrator, leading the city to chaos and ruin. Although Cersei attempted to strengthen their faction by allying with the Faith militants and building a new naval fleet, she eventually lost control of the city to the Faith, resulting in her arrest, which then also led Orain Waters to abandon her cause, stealing the naval fleet recently constructed. Although its origins are largely lost to history, Oldtown has stood for thousands of years, known as the richest and oldest of the Westerosi cities. Many believe it was originally constructed as a port for ancient powers that wished to trade with the elder races of Westeros, and later the first men who migrated into the continent. Over the years, several well-known structures were built in the city, such as the Citadel, a group of buildings that are home to the Maesters of Westeros, scholars who act as advisors to the rulers of the continent. During the Age of Heroes, the building that later became the Ravenry of the Citadel was a pirate stronghold that robbed passing ships. There is also the Starry Sept, which was the center of the Faith of the Seven for 1,000 years, until replaced by the Great Sept of Baelor in King's Landing. But the structure most often associated with the city is the High Tower on Battle Isle, known as the tallest building in the continent, surpassing even the 700-foot wall in the north. The High Tower was built atop a black stone foundation, believed to have been constructed before the arrival of the First Men. Some claim it must have been of Valyrian origin, since they were known to build with fused black stone, but the look and design of the structure and time period in which it was made suggest it was built by others, with some theorizing it may be related to the mysterious maze makers of Lorath, or the Deep Ones rumored to have built the Sea Stone Chair in the Iron Islands. When House Hightower took control of the black stone foundation, they built a wooden tower on top to act as a lighthouse. But under Uthor of the High Tower, it was remade into a stone tower 200 feet high, supposedly designed by Bran the Builder. The prosperous city of Oldtown grew around the High Tower and came to represent a valuable target for raiders, seeing the city sacked by Samwell the Starfire, Corrid the Cruel, and Giles the Woe, all within a century. Due to the devastation of these attacks, 3/4 of the city's population were sold into slavery. However, the High Tower was never conquered, and so House Hightower then oversaw a massive project to build protective stone walls around the city, greatly increasing its defensive capabilities. As the Kingdom of the Reach expanded under the Gardener Kings of Highgarden, the Hightowers chose to join them voluntarily through a marriage alliance, giving up their claim as petty kings to become the most powerful vassals of the realm. The Hightowers often valued peaceful negotiation over war, like during the Andal migration, when the leader of their house married an Andal princess to avoid conflict. Similarly, when House Targaryen invaded and conquered most of the continent, the High Septon convinced Lord Manfred Hightower to bend the knee, allowing Aegon to peacefully enter the city, where he was crowned King of Westeros by the Faith of the Seven. Many thought Aegon would choose Oldtown as his capital, until he decided to build a new city around the Aegon Fort, later known as King's Landing. 2 centuries later, in 209 AC, Oldtown suffered as the Great Spring Sickness spread throughout the continent. Although King's Landing saw the worst of the epidemic, Oldtown was not far behind, then suffering another tragedy a generation later when the Great Plague wiped out half of the city. In order to prevent the disease from spreading, Lord Quentyn Hightower locked them down, shutting the gates and burning the ships in the harbor, killing anyone who tried to leave. Although he succeeded in preventing a further outbreak, his harsh actions made him hated by the Smallfolk, who later attacked and killed Lord Quentyn and his son. Late into the War of the Five Kings, with the Arbor Fleet being used in the Lannister siege of Dragonstone, the Ironborn conquered the Shield Islands of the Reach, with some of their people even attempting to attack Oldtown, while others preyed on ships sailing into its harbor. Along the western coast of the rich and prosperous Westerlands, the city of Lannisport was founded by a branch of House Lannister. Originally a small village south of Casterly Rock, it eventually rose to become a rich and powerful settlement, second only to Oldtown before the construction of King's Landing. With close ties to the Lannister kings of the Rock, many of the families that reside in Lannisport had blonde hair with names like Lannis, Lannettes, and Lantells, likely descending from various branches of House Lannister. Unfortunately, their location makes them a prime target for the Ironborn, who often raided the area, burning the city at least 3 times, with these conflicts often leading to war between the territories. During the Dance of the Dragon Civil War in 130 AC, the Westerlands and Iron Islands once again were at odds, with the Red Kraken Dalton Greyjoy burning the Lannister fleet and sacking Lannisport. 4 years later, the Westerlands retaliated, successfully attacking the Iron Islands and bringing treasure and highborn hostages back home. Lannisport also saw battle during the First Blackfire Rebellion, when Sir Quentyn Ball killed Lefford Lannister outside its gates, forcing Daemon Lannister into retreat. After Robert's rebellion, the Seven Kingdoms knew peace for a number of years. However, soon Balon Greyjoy of the Iron Islands attempted his own rebellion, with his brothers creating and executing a plan of sailing secretly to Lannisport and burning their fleet to begin the Greyjoy Rebellion. However, their success did not last long, and soon the royal forces arrived to defeat the claimant king. Originally founded by the First Men as a harbor for trade along the south of the Vale, Gulltown developed into a rich and prosperous city, acting as an important hub to keep the Vale well supplied. Under the First Men, it was House Shet who ruled the area. However, when the Andals began their migration west, House Shet chose to ally with the invaders against House Royce of Runestone, who refused to bow to the Andals. Unfortunately, House Shet was betrayed by the Andal knight Gerald Grafton, who was rumored to have used the chaos of battle as a chance to kill the Shet king, then usurping his title and taking control of Gulltown. And while the people attempted rebellion, Gerald Grafton proved to be a wise ruler, seeing the settlement prosper greatly under his rule. House Grafton then allied with House Arryn, and together grew Gulltown into a prosperous city with a naval fleet for its protection. During a period of conflict known as the War Across the Water, fought between the North and the Vale for ownership of the Three Sisters, the Starks burned hundreds of their ships, and even made an unsuccessful attempt to conquer Gulltown. Later, during the War of Conquest, the Vale was one of the only territories able to offer significant resistance against the Targaryens, using their naval fleet to achieve several victories in the early part of the war. However, they could do nothing to protect against dragons, and so House Arryn eventually bent the knee. Nearly 300 years later, at the outbreak of Robert's Rebellion, the Vale was split, with House Arryn supporting the rebels, while Mark Grafton gathered royalist forces at Gulltown. However, the rebel army of Jon Arryn soon marched to battle and defeated their forces, with Robert Baratheon first over the walls, killing Mark Grafton during the fighting. Founded along the river Whiteknife, King Jon Stark of Winterfell drove out local sea raiders to build the Wolf's Den, which over the years was ruled by various branches of House Stark, such as the Grey Starks, as well as other northern families like the Flints, Locks, Slates, Longs, Holts, and Ashwoods. However, it would be under House Manderly, originally hailing from the Reach, that the area would truly prosper. Estimated to have occurred between 1000 and 600 BC, there came a time when House Manderly became an enemy of House Peak and the Gardener King in Highgarden. This resulted in their family's exile from the territory. Having lost their ancestral seat and facing the ruin of their house, it was the Starks of the North who welcomed them, bestowing the Wolf's Den as their new home and charging them with the protection of the White Knife. Using the riches they were able to bring from the south, the Manderleys built the city of White Harbor, protected by thick walls and later a small naval fleet. Within the city, they built the Sept of Snows to honor their faith in the 7 gods of the south, a great hall called Merman's Court where they hold feasts, and a new residence for their family at Newcastle, converting the Wolf's Den into a prison. Outside the city harbor, there is a massive stone in the sea known as Seal Rock, where the First Men built a ring fort which has now been fortified with crossbowmen, scorpions, and Spitfires defending the area. During the War of the Five Kings, House Manderly raised 1,500 men to join Robb Stark as he marched south, and during the Ironborn attack on Winterfell, they sent 12 barges filled with knights, war horses, and siege engines, only to be betrayed by the Boltons who burned Winterfell. Although the Manderleys were then forced to pledge allegiance to the Lannisters, they never truly turned against the Starks, making a private deal with Davos Seaworth to bring young Rickon Stark from Skagos in exchange for pledging themselves to King Stannis. A special thanks to all those who contribute to Civilization X, like Kyle Blitzsword, Grandmaster Pupper of the Took, and Isle Shadowcat. If you'd like to help the channel with a monthly donation, click on the Patreon link, and please be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to see more.